Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea sees a rise in the number of coronavirus cases in the capital area, a concern ahead of a major holiday when millions of people typically travel. President Jaein is going to address the UN General Assembly in a virtual session, calling for international support for the Korean Peninsula peace process and cooperation on COVID-19. And the Federal Reserve decides to keep interest rates at historic lows and to keep them there until jobs and inflation in America both recover. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea saw an increase in the number of new COVID-19 cases on Thursday, now just a few days after social distancing measures were eased in the capital region. Kim Yeon-sung reports.
South Korea reported 153 new cases of COVID-19 on Thursday, a slight jump after 3 days of around 100 cases. Of the infected cases, 145 were local infections and more than 80% were from the densely populated capital region. People aged 60 and above made up more than 40% of the cases. And around a quarter of all cases are untraceable. Infections in the Greater Seoul area have climbed back into triple digits after being below 100 for 5 straight days. Cluster infections emerging from care facilities, churches, workplaces have contributed to the capital region's rise in numbers. At least 10 cases emerged on Thursday at a Kia Motors factory in Gyeonggi-do province. The automaker has temporarily closed down its plant, which employs 6,000 workers. 5 new deaths have been reported in the country, bringing the death toll to 372. Health authorities are worried that the Korean Thanksgiving holiday of Chuseok, which starts from late September, could lead to the further spread of the virus around the country. Kim Yeon-sung, Arirang News.
The UN General Assembly next week will be airing a pre-recorded speech by President Moon Jae-in. The annual assembly is being held virtually this year. President Moon plans to ask for international support for South Korea's efforts for peace on the peninsula, and he's going to call for a joint response to the coronavirus pandemic. Kim Min-ji reports.
President Moon Jae-in will be giving a speech next week at the virtual session of the UN General Assembly, where he will be calling for international support for South Korea's peace initiative on the Korean Peninsula and highlighting the need for global efforts to overcome COVID-19.
President Moon is expected to stress the importance of global solidarity in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change, and to ask for the international community's support for peace on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia.
This will be Moon's 4th time speaking to the General Assembly since taking office in 2017. But because of the pandemic, leaders will be meeting virtually for the first time in the UN's 75-year history. Moon's pre-recorded video statement is expected to be played at around 2 a.m. Wednesday Korea time, which will be 1 p.m. Tuesday at the UN headquarters in New York. President Moon will also participate in a high-level UN meeting prior to the General Assembly session, where he will be speaking as the chair of MICTA, a middle power partnership bringing together Mexico, Indonesia, South Korea, Turkey, and Australia. It will be the first time for the rotating chair of MICTA to make a speech on the international stage, since it was set up in 2013 to support global governance. Moon is expected to take note of the UN's contributions to global peace and express MICTA's commitment to promoting multilateral cooperation on COVID-19 and to addressing issues facing humankind. The top office explained that the UN stage will serve as an opportunity for South Korea to show its determination to play a leading role in solving global issues and to take its multilateral diplomacy to another level. The highlight no doubt will be Moon's keynote speech and what message he'll have for North Korea to get the peace process back on track. Considering Moon's time left in office and given the U.S. presidential election in November, the clock is ticking for a meaningful breakthrough. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to keep interest rates where they are, near 0%, and will keep them there until at least 2023. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said they want to see employment recover and inflation get back up to 2%. Kim Jae-hee reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve kept its benchmark interest rate steady at near zero on Wednesday and vowed to keep the rates there until there is a consistent rise in inflation. All 17 members of the Monetary Policy Committee forecast that rates would stay fixed near zero through 2021. And 13 out of 17 members indicated they expect near zero rates through 2023.
We now indicate that we expect it will be appropriate to maintain the current 0 to 1/4% target range for the federal funds rate until labor market conditions have reached levels consistent with the committee's assessments of maximum employment, and inflation has risen to 2% and is on track to moderately exceed 2% for some time.
In a statement released after a two-day policy-setting meeting on Wednesday, the Fed said the COVID-19 epidemic continued to weigh on the economy and that the Fed is committed to using its full range of tools to support the U.S. economy in this challenging time. The Fed also adjusted its projections for GDP and unemployment, predicting a smaller economic hit in 2020. It projected that the U.S. economy would shrink by 3.7% this year, better than the 6.5% decline feared in June. A lower unemployment rate was also expected for the end of 2020. Fed said they expected the unemployment rate to fall to 7.6% by the end of this year, lower than the 9.3% previously anticipated. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-wan, Professor of Economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, good afternoon. Thank you for coming on.
Good afternoon, Devin.
Well, the Federal Reserve has wrapped up its September meeting, saying it's not going to raise rates before 2023 and still has some room to maneuver. Apparently, what's the takeaway from this meeting?
Yes, Fed's signal from September FOMC meeting is clear and simple. They pledged to support economic recovery by setting a higher bar to raise interest rate, and they will be holding interest rate for at least 3 more years. Technically speaking, all these mean that U.S. Fed will stick to 0% interest rate even if inflation reaches 2% and the unemployment rate falls around 4%. Mr. Powell also reiterated the importance of Congress more aggregate spending to support hard-hit households and businesses.
Yeah, despite this promise of more support from the Fed, though, the markets were mixed because of uncertainty about these tech stocks. What's the story in the global markets?
Along with U.S. Fed commitment to 0% interest rate yesterday, U.S. market temporarily increased in the middle of the trading, but in the end, concerns on large capital IT corporations like Apple and Facebook have driven market downwards yesterday. Dow Jones Industrial gained by 0.1%, but Nasdaq lost by 1.3%. All Asian markets of Nikkei, Shanghai, Hong Kong had negative returns between negative 5% and negative 1.7% due to U.S. Nasdaq's large drop yesterday.
Right, and this decline has carried over into the Korean markets today, too. It looks like institutions were the big sellers today. What happened there?
That's true, Devin. Domestic market is much affected by U.S. market of yesterday. And domestic investors' understanding is that U.S. Fed's policies are not enough to support U.S. economy and global economy. Kospi dropped by 1.2%, and Kosdaq also dropped at the same rate of 1.2% today. Even though domestic individual investors purchased in both markets, foreign investors and domestic institutional investors' sales were stronger.
Indeed. Well, we see for the Korean macro situation, the OECD forecasting a contraction this year of 1%. That's a little lower than its previous forecast, but still this is considered a rather positive estimate, even by Korea's finance minister. What do you make of this forecast?
In its latest projection for Korean economy, the OECD has predicted that the Korean economy will contract by 1% in 2020 from a year earlier. This updated prediction marked a downward adjustment from its August forecast of negative 0.8% growth. But still, negative 1% was the highest economic growth forecast among 37 OECD member countries. The OECD also recommended fiscal policy's role in reviving COVID-hit economy. This recommendation actually in line with Korean government's current policy direction with quite a few times of the supplementary budget and much larger regular budget of next year.
Well, let's talk about oil for a minute. The price of West Texas crude is back above $40 a barrel thanks to this latest Gulf hurricane hitting supplies. Tell us about oil and your outlook for it.
Global oil price has exceeded $40 per barrel as Hurricane Sally shuts down almost 30% of Gulf's oil production facilities. This natural factor increased oil price by almost 5% in a day. But oil price is expected to go back to previous $30 per barrel level as hurricane effect is temporary and demands for oil products are still weak from COVID shock.
Got it. All right, Professor, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you very much.
And more than 4,000 delivery workers in Korea are going to refuse to sort packages ahead of the Chuseok holiday to protest what they say is an unfairly heavy workload. According to a civic group advocating on their behalf, they're going to stop sorting parcels from next Monday if companies don't add more workers to share the burden. The group argues that workers are paid per delivery, but the time-consuming job of sorting goes unpaid. These are about 1/10 of all the delivery workers in the country, so disruptions can be expected because demand is high, not only due to Chuseok, but also social distancing. The South Korean government has arranged a job fair online to help people find work. In normal times, a company would set up a booth where they could answer questions and take applications in person. But that's happening online now. Our PNG has this report.
This woman looking for a job sits in front of a camera for a one-on-one with the company director. The director answers questions on what exactly the job is about and what requirements are needed to apply for the position.
Preparing portfolios will be helpful for online interviews. Showing this portfolio on the screen during the online interview or sending it to us in advance will help you get the job.
He also explains the company's current business partners and its plans to expand overseas. The Trade, Industry and Energy Ministry and SMEs and Startups Ministry have arranged this online job fair to help job seekers amid the severe employment crisis. Even though COVID-19 has forced this year's job fair to go completely online, job seekers are still able to ask questions to company managers and get the information they need. The recruitment presentations are live-streamed on YouTube. Then, the company managers directly answer viewers' questions through the chatting system.
This way of online interaction can be more beneficial as it is accessible to a wider range of people anywhere and at any time.
A total of 66 SMEs and public institutions are taking part in the job fair, which runs until Friday, September 25th. The fair is expected to help around 560 people find a job. 배은지, Arirang News.
The South Korean chemical company LG Chem is spinning off its electric vehicle battery business now that it's reached a considerable size. The new company, wholly owned by LG Chem, is to be launched on December 1st, tentatively named LG Energy Solutions. LG hopes this will strengthen its position in the battery sector. Having achieved quarterly sales of nearly $2.4 billion, LG Chem said in a statement Thursday that the business now yields a sizable profit and it's the right time for a spin-off. LG Chem added that the unit will need to secure massive amounts of capital because it's now pouring about $2.5 billion a year into facility investment. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.